We are live. Hello,
Ah,
hello.
hello,
So,
everybody.
welcome to Cabaret Q&A. We are so excited. You can see. And I am Heather, and of course, we have the amazing Ryan above me.
Hello.
And then you're sandwiched between one Heather and another Heather. Two Heathers.
The two
Yes.
Heathers.
The
We're
two
like the three
Heathers.
horsemen of the apocalypse.
Welcome, Heather. Welcome, welcome. So, if you haven't given permission to StreamYard, if you could give permission to StreamYard, then it makes it easier for us to see who you are. But we have our phones, so we'll see you anyway.
Right.
But, just a thing. So, welcome, Heather Wild.
Hello, Heather Jean. I'm so excited. I love to meet other Heathers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And I'm very excited to meet Mr. Ryan as well.
Oh,
Yes, they just met for the first time, just moments ago. It's very exciting.
Chaos ensues.
Yeah. So, Cabaret Q&A. If you have any questions about Cabaret, if you want to share anything, jump into the comments and get involved. And I'm just looking. Oh, is that you, Ryan, that just put hey everyone?
That's me.
Oh, okay. He's
That's
always
me.
Facebook user. It's like
for some reason it does not give me the option, and I do not know why, to just do things in the way that I want them to do them. I am not using technology in that way, apparently. But I show up perfectly imperfect as we do.
Well, we should. We try. And this month, of course, still doing the thing in April, Magic of Pleasure.
Yes.
So let's kick off. Heather, what's pleasure about for you?
Pleasure is about being alive. And we tend to, especially in the US, where we were founded by Puritans and we haven't gotten over it yet, we tend to be, we automatically, because there's so much shame around sex and bodies and sexuality, we tend to we hear the word pleasure and we go straight into sexual pleasure. But, and God bless sexual pleasure. I love sexual pleasure. It's a real and wonderful thing. But there's also the pleasure of just, stroking my arm. And I'm like, oh, I'm so soft. And oh, feel my nails on my arm. But there's also the pleasure of reading a great book or, sitting in a warm, salt bath. The pleasure of seeing a goal realized, the pleasure of watching it rain or, they're talking to a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time. So I really think that it benefits us to hone in on pleasure because we are so pain focused, and it's socially acceptable to be depressed. It's socially acceptable to be sad. It's socially acceptable to be dissatisfied. And I think that when we start focusing on the pleasurable things in our life and realizing how much pleasure is available to us, that it's transformative.
Yeah. And, with Confidence to Cabaret, one of the things that we've often talked about is the revolution of pleasure. We often talk specifically, there's this quote that we often cite, which is by the wonderful Lydia Lunch. The first thing they take from you is pleasure, and the most revolutionary act is to take that back. And I love to say that, right? That quote just every time. But with Cabaret, one of the things that we often talk about, as we say, is how that equates to, taking up space and how we show up in the world. And I love what you're saying with that, pleasure is a multifaceted tool. How do you embrace pleasure in what you do to bring that message to others?
So I've been all types of coaches, and I was really focused on ethical sales coaching, like helping high integrity entrepreneurs learn how to sell in a way that feels good to them because it's a thing. And I've recently, my soul just stopped me in my tracks and was like, you can't do that unless you also start talking about transformation, because that is my truest gift to the world. And even the sales coaching clients that came to me have ended up needing transformational work. And it's really wonderful to help people with anything. And it's wonderful to see their businesses and them get more comfortable with sales. But the transformational stuff is what really, really lights me up. So And I'm also reaching back into my roots and bringing back my sex positive sex education and, sex coaching as well. So I haven't been focused a lot on pleasure, like pleasure and sales hasn't really lent themselves to each other. And so this is, I love being a part of this conversation because it's my chance to get out and start talking about this because it's something that I can help people with. My own journey, I have always, enjoyed pleasure, but I didn't know how to achieve maximum pleasure for a long time. That was a struggle for me. And then, I suffered from a lot of anxiety and depression and, drug addiction, went through recovery, grew as much as I could from that, and then dove into personal growth. And one of the first things that I did, my therapist actually recommended a book by Mama Gina, who I was talking to you guys off camera about, and I loved it. And I've never purchased a course and actually gone through a course with anybody. I would just read books and not do the exercises. And so self-help is like a novel, right? I mean, you can just read it and just osmosis, right? So I would get all these great ideas, but I wouldn't implement. And so I actually purchased a 6-week course from her where it was really going through the book and really, we were in a community of people who were also going through these exercises and starting to recognize all the pleasure around you and really surrender to that pleasure instead of, being, rigid and like, no, pleasure is only this and pleasure is bad. And so I did a 6-week course and then I signed up for her mastery course and went through that. And so it was a 4-month long, journey of being in the community of, at that time, 250 women from all over the world who were exploring how to bring more pleasure into their life. And it's amazing. So as I get back into the sex coaching and everything, I'll be talking about it more, but it's not something I've been doing a lot in the last few years.
I really want to, like the transformational stuff that you're talking about with your work. You were talking about this earlier actually in the community, and I was really like, oh, what is this? Because you were talking about a transformational ritual that you do or have done and practice. Talk about that, because I mean, as much as this is about magic and pleasure, it's also about magic and how we use that to employ change. And I think that's a really fascinating thing. So what was that? What was it you were speaking of there?
So that was interesting. So I was a rideshare driver, right. And one of my clients that I drove quite a bit, I was always telling him stories about how, I'm trying to do this in my coaching business. And, all my stories ended, it was like me trying so hard and nothing ever working out for me. And one day he really pissed me off and he provided me this reflection. He said, Heather, your life is like a sitcom. You're like a sitcom character. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like Phoebe from Friends. I'm like the, I'm the lovable fuck up was what I realized. And so I had been using this character my whole life to like hide my brilliance. So, I was always trying and trying and trying, but I would always manage to self-sabotage in some spectacularly funny way. And so people weren't intimidated by me. I could go and try, but never, have my success. And I was realizing I was valuing these people that wouldn't value my success. And I was valuing being entertaining to people more than I was valuing my own success. And I was like, ugh. And so I had never really messed with any kind of ritual magic because I was afraid of it. And I was like, what if I fuck up? What if I go like Dark Willow from Buffy,
The best Willow, yeah.
If I could just absorb shit from books like she did, oh my God.
Just saying. Yeah.
Just saying, right? Like, oh my gosh. So for like a week, I just became obsessed with this idea of doing this ritual. And I went to a cabin. I gathered up all my magic supplies that I'd never really used. And I made a list of all the things that characterized the lovable fuck up. And then I made a list of all the things I wanted to really embody. And I, cast a circle and had candles and incense and Deva Premal playing. I mean, I went all out. Like it's, pure classic addict, insanity. Like it's all or nothing. And I sat down and I read out the characteristics of the lovable fuck up. And I thanked them for how they had served me. And I cried. And the things that I didn't want to keep, I put in one pile. And then the characteristics I did want to keep, I put in another. And then after I did that, I burned all the pieces of paper of the things that I was letting go. Took a shower, came back, sat down in the circle, and then read out loud all the things that I was calling in. And my thing was like, if I read it and I stumbled over it, I had to read it again. And some things I had to read like 6 times before I could say it. And I had to say it from my diaphragm. And it was really powerful. And one of the funny things that happened during this, like, I do have spiritual gifts, and I've just been too afraid to really do anything with them. But I'm sitting there, I'm in this cabin. I'm, not completely away from civilization, but I'm not like around a lot of people. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I say, I embrace opportunities, and there was a fucking knock at the door. 3 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, it's a serial killer or a bear.
Right.
But then I thought, maybe it's my spirit guides, because my favorite state of my highest joyous state is harmless mischief. And I was like, I think my spirit guides are messing with me. And so I went to the kitchen and I like looked out the window and I couldn't see anything there. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm safe. And so I threw open the door and I said, welcome opportunity.
And was it a bear?
Bears don't knock. Come on.
Nothing. Well, I mean, it could have been knocking into the trash can outside or something, but there was nothing there. But I very clearly something on the door. And I was like, okay. So, so I finished that ritual. And that was back in 2015. And it's time for me to do another one. I'm actually planning to do another one on myself in the next month or so, because I'm going through a really transformative experience right now, and I want to anchor it in. And I also want to, when I was a sex worker, it was my identity. It was everything, and it wasn't just a job. It was an adventure. I loved it. And it was my entire life. It was my entire purpose, my entire identity. And so when I walked away, it was so painful for me to walk away, even though the industry had changed and I was not having fun anymore, that I just took everything that was like Escort Heather and just shoved her into a closet to die. And there were a lot of things that needed to die. I mean, honestly, but there were some good things about that version of me. And recently I was in contact with somebody who knew me from that time in my life. And he was like, where's my thug bitch at? Like, who are you? And he's like, I'm glad you've made the changes. I'm glad you got your life together. But, there were good things about you back then. And so this transformation ritual will also, be part of that, will be me going in and sourcing, like, what am I letting go from Thug Heather and what am I bringing forward? Because I need that bitch in my life. So, but this transformation ritual, when I did it, one of the things that came to me was that I'm supposed to hold space and take other people through it. So that's going to be something that I'm going to start offering just as a really powerful experience. But I really want to do it in purpose. And this ritual took about 5 hours to complete. And I don't want to do 5 hours on Zoom.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Understand that.
Oh. Yeah, I can see why. I can see why. It has to be a personal thing, but I mean, that's a huge transformation to let go of something that's so much a part of your life and completely pivot to something else. And I think in maybe greater or lesser ways, during the COVID year, let's say, we've all had to do a certain amount of letting go and accepting what we want to keep. And I think sometimes we focus on the letting go and what we're losing, and we don't focus on what we get to keep or what we choose to keep. And we don't focus on what else we've added to that adds richness and is new and exciting and pleasurable, frankly. So when you made this transformation from one part of your life and let that go, from being an escort to being, Heather Wild coaching, I mean, how did you go about that?
I wish it had been that quick and smooth. So I had gone to coaching school, but I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do as a coach, and I hated the sales and marketing techniques that I had been taught. They're, toxic FOMO, negging, shaming people for, oh, if you can't spend $5,000, you don't really believe in yourself. There's a lot of really great people in the industry, and there's some people that are teaching better ways to sell, but a lot of it is really toxic. And I was also unwilling to step into my greatness, yada, yada. So when I quit escorting, I didn't know what to do with myself. I went from, making like $1,000+ a week to making like $10 an hour, I think was my first job out of the sex industry at a sex toy store, which should have been heaven, but the management was insane. And then I was a rideshare driver. And then I delivered groceries for a little while. And then I worked in property management. And then I became a limo driver. And then I finally got my shit together to be a coach. Right. So it was interesting, like I shoved that part of my identity into this, closet. And then I went and worked at jobs where I could kind of talk about my past. But when I went and got the corporate job in property management and then was later working for like one of the most exclusive limo companies in the world, I had to really, really be in the closet and really like tamp down my personality and really, because I'm a very open person. And all of a sudden I had to be like, okay, can I say this or not? And it was really bad for me spiritually. Like and I think it caused some depression. Actually, I think working that corporate job was actually a contributing point to me getting breast cancer. Because I was so unhappy. I was so not myself, and I was so unhappy. Doing that transformation ritual years ago, I feel like it didn't change everything overnight, but I feel like it really called to the universe and said, okay, I'm fucking serious. I'm sick of being this person who's not getting what she wants, who's not creating the life she wants, who's not being the change she's here to make as a coach. And, I want something different. And over the years, that stuff has manifested. And I actually have the pieces of paper that I kept. I need to look through them and acknowledge like what has, manifested. But reading books on personal growth and business growth and spiritual growth is good. You can't just read them. You have to actually do the fucking exercises. But
I'm so disappointed by that.
I mean, self-help,
Yeah.
Me too. But actually investing and like putting my money where my mouth was, actually that energetic exchange of like taking courses made a difference. Going to in-person events made a further difference. It made it more real to me. But actually getting one-to-one coaching on things is what's really made the difference for me. So like in 2020, I invested in one-to-one coaching for my business, and that helped me grow by like leaps and bounds. And, it's change. I don't think it's that change is hard. I think it's that we fight it on so many levels and we make it hard, but it's also not as easy as just saying, I surrender. I'm just not going to fight anymore. And I'm just going to step into this change. It's like, it takes a lot of energy to make a transformation, and why try to source all that from yourself? Get into a community that's about change. Get get with a mentor who is focusing some energy on you as well. Get some energy healing, or do some meditations, or, I have a method that I use on my clients and on myself called power reclamation. And I'll just literally like sit down and be like, okay, I'm calling all the power that I have been unwilling to accept. I'm calling it in right now. But even with that, like as powerful as that is, it's still having other people who are on a growth path and being willing to, this is huge, investing in yourself and getting other people helping you up level. But here's the biggest thing. A lot of people will pay for the energy healing. They'll pay for the coaching. They'll pay for the seminars, the books, and all the stuff. And they'll reach a new level, or they'll start to reach a new level. But then they keep making the same damn decisions that they did at this lower vibrational point. And it screws everything up. You have to be willing, if you want to become a new person, you have to be willing to make new decisions.
I fully agree. And there's that whole sort of understanding of that is, I find there's like two parts to that. There's an understanding it, and then there's a knowing it.
Yes.
And everyone has that moment, because there's plenty of times when I've gone, I understand that concept, I completely get it. A year later, when I'm down in the gutter, I go, oh God, I just got what that means. Now I know what you're talking about.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So I really love what you were saying about that with holding space as well. So how do you as a coach then sort of take people through that process yourself? I mean, that's a whole journey.
So I believe in the woo, obviously, but the woo didn't work for me until I found practical things as well. And so I'm a big believer in not stopping until you find what works for you, tweaking whatever doesn't work. If you find something that's a pretty good fit, but not quite, tweak the fuck out of it. Like, don't try to do something out of the box if it doesn't work for you. So that's how I've gotten a lot of growth, is actually finding, being willing to try a bunch of things and then say, I bet this would work better if I did it like this. And I'll do that with my clients too. If I'm working with someone and something we're doing is just not quite hitting home, I'm like, don't sit there and think there's something wrong with you. Tell me, hey, this isn't working. And I'm not going to be pissed. I'm going to be like, great. How do we tweak it? What can we learn? What can we create? So what's been really powerful for me and what I do with my clients is a structured journaling exercise where it's really strong medicine. You really have to be willing to come face to face with your flaws and your part in things. It's like taking radical responsibility for yourself, not making everything your fault, but 100% being willing to look and say, this is how I created this situation, or this is how I contributed, or this is what I'm doing now that's not allowing me to let it go. And so it's going through that. You see where, for instance, so I'm going through this breakup right now. And the person that I separated myself from, he's my soulmate. I know he is, but he is in no way ready to be with me, or not in a way that I want him to be with me, right now. And I did this structured journaling exercise on all the things that are, and he's amazing. He's one of the most blindingly brilliant and amazing people on the planet when he's Dr. Jekyll. When he's Mr. Hyde, he's a piece of shit. And that's who he wants to turn over his control to right now. But I was taking his inventory about all the things I don't like about him. And then I had to take his name out of it and put my name at the front. And 20 of the things that out of about 20 things that I wrote down that were really pissing me off about him, 18 of them strongly resonated. And I'm like, okay, I'm calling him a coward. Well, there's a lot of ways I'm being a coward. Right. There's a lot of ways, I'm pissed off because he won't own his power. I'm not owning my power. I'm not stepping into myself the way I could. And so it's this kind of stuff, like using life. I believe that life is always teaching us. It's always giving us opportunities to grow if we're aware of it. And so going through these type of exercises with people, and then adding in anger work and adding in, some woo-woo stuff, doing that, that's how I have freed myself from a lot of my past and a lot of, the painful emotions that were just trapped and like rotting inside of me. And I had no idea how to get them out. And I think it's from that place, like when we get back to as much of an emotional center, a neutral place, then we can start responding to the world instead of reacting. And when we respond, we have the opportunity to make a situation better instead of spiraling it down and just burning it down, And from that place, you can start making decisions and have what I call a conscious rebellion. My 20s, a lot of it was an unconscious rebellion where it was just like, oh, my family, they think this, they wanted me to go to college and get married and have a couple of kids. I'll show them, I'll go be a hooker, and I wanted to be a hooker. It was actually a childhood dream of mine. No joke. I was like, that looks fun. And,
right.
And I was right. It really was fun. But there were a lot of things that I did that were just very self-sabotaging and very harmful to myself. So a conscious rebellion is looking at all your choices and making the choice to do something because it's what you value and desire, and it's your standard, and it's what you want to be motivated by, instead of saying, well, the church says I shouldn't do this, so I'm going to go do it. Or my parents really wanted me to do this, so I'm going to go do the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. And that to me is like when we get to a point of like, you really start down the path of like true transformation when you're making these choices, you know, of your own free will. You're not being controlled by the world and your triggers.
Oh, I love the idea of conscious rebellion. I really enjoy that as a concept. Oh, dear,
I think that is your motto, conscious rebellion.
I would like to think so. I would like to think so.
Well, tell me some about your transformation, because I mean, you're, you know, you both are fascinating. I got to know Heather a little bit the other day in Clubhouse. But yeah, I mean, you know, being a performer of any kind can be a tough life. Being a drag queen, gotta be a tough life. I mean, that is like honing your soul in the fires of Mordor. Like,
I mean, it certainly is true. Sauron is still looking for that ring I stole. But and in my defense, I wanted it. So
it's precious to you.
It is precious to me. I mean, certainly for me, you know, I mean, definitely part of the thing was always, you know, there's a certain path you're going to follow. You know, I was definitely raised in a former military house, you know, as in both my parents were in the army, and, you know, there's very specific ideas of how you're going to grow up, especially, you know, they were not disciplinarians to the degree a lot of people would expect, but certainly there was the idea of what is a status quo, and then realizing that I was not only queer, but I was weird and queer was a very different realization. And every time it looked like I would go down a path that seemed somewhat respectable, obviously I then zigzagged away from that. But then my industry has changed radically to be acceptable, which makes me very alienated, because it doesn't speak to any of the experiences that I have as an artist or as a person. But that has dug my resolve further into that. And I think that's why sort of, you know, coming through with CTC and Competency Cabaret has been really interesting, because the idea of exploring, particularly, for instance, you know, with this month, exploring the idea of radical pleasure, which is something that we've talked about, you know, a lot within this community, but I've also talked a lot about on stage for a long time. I was predominantly known as a host. It was a really interesting concept, because the minute you told people they had permission, which was a big thing, that they had permission to be that person and to embrace their own pleasure and voice and uniqueness and all of that stuff, the connections you'd see would be mind-blowing. I mean, the amount of time, I think that's why I still live for it, you know, is the possibility that one day outside of this pandemic that I'll be able to go back into spaces where I can sort of say, you know, they don't need my permission at all.
Right.
But having someone say, you don't need that permission, makes a huge difference and a huge switch over. And I think that's why it's really interesting, you know, talking to you today, you know, about, you know, the idea of conscious rebellion, which just really resonates, obviously, really resonates, especially when you're talking about, you know, things like sex positivity, because people are so frightened of that. You know, I'm in the UK, me and Heather are both in the UK, which is, you know, still has a Victorian prudishness to it. The idea of embracing any form of pleasure, sex positive or otherwise, is still very alien to people. You know, how did you combat that whole sort of, you know, that prudishness, that puritanical sort of environment that you were talking about earlier?
So I grew up in a small town where Southern Baptist, you know, very small town values. And I can just remember, like, at a very, very young age, I looked at it and I looked at the world and I was like, it doesn't have to be this way. I just came into the world with this knowing, you know, and it's interesting because it was never, it shouldn't be this way. But it was always the thought was it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And then yet, you know, as I got older, you know, we went to churches and they were misogynistic as hell. I shaved half of my head when I was 15, so my parents wouldn't make me go to church anymore. Because the preacher had actually said women have no place in church, and I was like, peace, I'm out. I don't want to be here anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there's great things about religions, you know, but this was a very toxic environment for, you know, a female child. And so I started studying Wicca at that point, and it was so healing to have, like, okay, there was once a religion that actually venerated women instead of, you know, saying that they were evil and sinful and all that. But yeah, the stuff just never made any sense to me. I'm like, why is sex wrong? Like, this doesn't compute. But I did internalize a lot of that shame, you know, and I realized recently through this whole experience, as much as, you know, if Heather came to me and she was, well, I won't put this on you because I don't want people thinking that we had any kind of conversation about this, because we have not. I
have no idea what you're going to say. So
I know. So I'm going to put it back on me. I really need a spanking. I really need a man that knows how to take control and like play those kind of games with me.
Sure.
And if Ryan came to me and said, I really need a spanking, I would be like, great, how are we going to get you a spanking? You know?
Right. Yeah.
But when it's me, I'm like, no, I can't do that. So it's really interesting. And it's something that I'm like, okay, I'm 45 years old. I should be able to get a fucking spanking if I want a fucking spanking. I get over it. Right. So, you know, it's weird. It's weird how I'm very, very permissive about other people's pleasure and their sexuality. And I still struggle, you know, with these things on my own. You know, it's so pervasive. But some sex educator made the point that by making sex so taboo, like, the problem is that, you know, we have all these hangups, you know, and it really gets in the way of our pleasure. But on the other hand, if it was a woman, I can't figure out who this was, but she was like, on the other hand, it also layers our whole world with rich layers of eroticism that wouldn't be there anymore because stuff is taboo.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I really don't want things, you know, I'm all about sex positive sex education, you know, and I'm brilliant at it because there's just something about my face that people will tell me anything and they just feel comfortable, which is awesome, unless I'm at the Goodwill and the cashier is trying to unload her life story to me after we've known each other for 30 seconds. But you know, I love, you know, I've taught classes about, you know, how to hook up without dying, you know, how to successfully hook up and get your needs met without dying, and, you know, pleasurable, safer sex. I love to teach people how to use condoms in a way that both makes them more effective and makes them feel better. You know, I'm here to be a light and an example to people about what they can do when they embrace their own standards, values, and desires. And, but I'm seeing, like, there's still so much work I have to do on my own stuff. But I know that's just so that, like, if I just bust it out and I'm like, yes, I have permission to do everything, people couldn't relate. But if I can share my story about, here's where I've given myself full permission to do this, this, and this, but these are the things that I'm still feeling shame about. And I know, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's so frustrating, but, you know, this is my journey. So it's a constant thing. You just, you know, if it's important to you, which physical intimacy is, like, I think my primary love language, and it's very, very important to me. So, you know, I have to then go put in the work, you know, and I'll probably go and work with another sex coach at one point, just to help myself really get the help that I need.
Oh, I love that you talk about working with other coaches as well to produce that. We were talking about the coaches always need coaches. It's the same, you know, psychologists, coaches need coaches. I fully agree with that. I love what you were saying as well about the link you made there between the inherent misogyny of the church and, you know, and not just the church as an institution, but, you know, the world, misogyny and pleasure, and how those things kind of convalesce and how they create these weird layers within society, which they can then further add punishment to, which is always that's the caveat, right? It's like every time we're told to push these things down, that creates, you know, a layer of pleasure. It can create something, you know, individual fetishes or any number of different things. And then when we seek that and go, oh, well, now I can deal with that and create this kind of my own version of this and my own healthy way of exploring that through sexuality and through pleasure and through realizing that as a human, they then go, shame. And it's like, but you did this.
No, it's the ultimate control. And, you know, I think it's interesting that science tells us that the biological directive of all organisms is to reproduce, right? And in, you know, the Christian Bible, which the Old Testament is really Judaism, which I think it's so funny that so many Christians preach off the Old Testament. I'm like, it's Judaism, it's not Christianity, but okay.
Yeah.
But God said, go forth and multiply. So it is our prime directive, whether you're a creationist or a scientist, our prime directive is to reproduce. How do you reproduce? Through sex. And so it's a natural urge, and it's a very powerful urge. So what better way to control people than to tell them their most basic and powerful drive is wrong? Because of course we're not going to be able to, pick the one thing that we're not going to be able to resist, the one apple we're not going to be able to pick, and make that like the ultimate sin. And then you've got that shame and guilt to control people forever.
Right.
And I don't know if that's how things were set up to be, or if that's how they evolved over the eons. Unfortunately, the more people I think people are basically good, but something happens when there's too many of us in one place. We start fucking shit up, and so whether it's religion or corporations or whatever, like we just get into a mess. Like it's like the more people you have gathered focused on one thing, the less humanity there is.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we've talked about typically, well, one of the things that really informs the way we kind of do things within Confidence Through Cabaret is that we like to focus on how cabaret has then influenced our confidence, because we talk about, taking up space, as Heather said, and using our voice and doing this stuff so that we can kind of develop the tools within our kind of within our toolbox to be able to go out into the world and to kind of take ownership of all the stuff that we want to take ownership of. How does that relate for you, and how do you do that within your work?
So, I can go back to, my personal story. So, I did want to be a sex worker from a very young age. I saw Pretty Woman, and at the point that she was like, I want the fairy tale, I was like, bitch, get real. Take the apartment, take the new clothes, get better clients,
Thank you.
I was 12, but I was like, So, but I was very like tomboyish. I didn't do a lot to groom myself. I could clean up, but I rarely did. I shared with Heather the other day on Clubhouse about how there was a fear that, nobody ever told me I was pretty. So I was like, the fear was, what if I put on all the makeup and I wear the pretty clothes and I'm still not pretty? Right. And also my primary directive was to get the fuck out of this small town before they stoned me to death, because I knew from a very young age that I was bisexual. I knew that I did not agree with their political or religious views. And I was like, I need to get the hell out before I'm killed. And so my focus was very much on my academics. And so I didn't think I was pretty. I didn't think I was attractive. And then I decided to go into sex work, and I had to have this crash course. I had to go get my nails done. I had to get my eyebrows done. I had to learn to put on makeup. I had to learn to fix my hair. I had to learn to walk in heels. And all of that transformed me, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, like I am pretty, and like, and it did increase my confidence. But then I had like a lot of this shadow stuff that, I then in my 30s was able to take all this emotional crap and like process stuff and take back my power and increase my power and everything, which that's where true sexiness comes from, which is that the discussion we were having in Clubhouse the other night was about confidence. And that's really where sexy comes from. Like, you can take the most beautiful woman in the world, and if she looks insecure, it really removes the shine, and then you've got, somebody, shows up in overalls and like combat boots, but they're really confident, like that can be, really sexy. So that changed the way I saw myself. It changed the way I showed up in the world. As I started healing my inner stuff, it really changed the way I, show up in the world. And one of my favorite things in the world is really outrageous heels.
Bordellos!
Yes, sir! So I love wearing those shoes grocery shopping or to like go to the movies, because it enlivens people to see these outrageous, sexy shoes. And it causes me to have conversations that I would never have, with people. I don't know how I'm going to bring all this into my work. But, it's definitely something that I talk about. It was definitely transformative to like learn like, oh, I can be sexy. I can be feminine. I can, revel in this,
Mm.
you know, and so much of beauty is really just good grooming.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You can take somebody with like beautiful features, and if they've got a damn unibrow, you know, it's like you see, you know, beautiful Hollywood actors and actresses made to look geeky and ugly for, you know, some ugly duckling role that they're playing.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they can be ugly too. Okay.
And then that plays into this whole idea of like what can be considered. And I love that you were saying that before. It's like what really is the thing here. And the thing is, it's, you know, the unibrow could be sexy as hell, let's face it, who, you know, that's just about, yeah, right. And it's all about like, it's just how you express that. And somebody who knows themselves and embodies themselves and just takes that whole thing and just goes, I am me, and that is it. Like, that is all that really matters. If someone embraces that side of it, the minute they step into their power, the minute they embrace all of those features and they say, fuck you, I don't need, you know, to have anybody tell me what is defined as sexy. I define as sexy. That's the thing. Like, that's a big thing. I mean, that's what cabaret is about as far as I'm concerned. It's like we make the rules as to what is sexy because we're the ones on stage with our bodies doing the thing with the hustle, and we're the ones defining it. Like, everybody else can have their rules. That's fine. That's for them. This is for us.
Right. I love that. Put that on a t-shirt. I will buy it. Heather, you've been so quiet. Like, I would love to hear about like if you've got some brain space. I know you're kind of like running everything.
Well,
like
I'm just always the voice, so this is a real pleasure to listen to you guys chat because I'm just always the voice, and so this is quite fun because everybody in Confidence Through Cabaret knows my story and knows my background and the whole. I mean, I'm just like, you know, very open book on Confidence Through Cabaret. So, and everybody else's podcast. So it's just a real pleasure to listen to you guys. I was just thinking about, because, you know, obviously we don't really like heels, do we, Ryan?
No, we don't like them at all. No, definitely.
No. And if you've seen any of my social media this week, you'll know Heather's gone for shoes.
Oh my God. I was just thinking like,
amazing.
Okay,
so here's the deal. So I've put a lot of women in heels. I mean, real heels, not like work heels, but like heels
Sexy
for their first
heels.
time. And as soon as they put them on, because I lend out my shoes, I've got lots of them. So as soon as they put them on, they'll go, wow, like now I'm powerful. Mm-hmm. Now I feel sexy. Now I feel like I can express all the things that I want to. But it's a weird thing because if you take off the shoes, you still can.
Mm-hmm.
You can still have all the weird conversations. You can still feel all the power. You can still feel sexy. And we've talked a lot in the Confidence Through Cabaret community about, you know, how we use props and how that empowers us. And we always, you know, talk about like what kind of prop would you want to have with you, and you know, what does that mean, and how does that feel? And it can be anything from we've had things like wings to roller skates to, I mean, if it's mine, then it's massive fuck you heels. You know, it's like whatever it is that makes you feel powerful. I mean, I'm going to get slated for this. So I'm glad we're not recording. But, you know, I miss the power shoulder pads, you know, because that made me feel so strong. And I will grant you that was in a corporate environment. So therefore, in the patriarchy, it was predominantly designed by men that I felt like I kind of, you know, could take up space, but I loved it. I loved feeling that way. And the weird thing is when you take those off, or in the case of shoulder pads, when they disappear, then why are we still not that same version of ourselves? Why are we still not powerful? Why are we still not taking up space and desiring pleasure? It's a really weird phenomenon to me.
Yeah.
I think they're talismans. And I mean, in you know, ritual throughout time, You know, you have talismans that embody your power, you know? And so I think I get what you're saying, because I am a different person when I put my heels on. It's me, but it's like Heather to the 10th power, you know, and I do feel more sassy and more fun. And I know it's not just the heels, but it's like me exuding that energy is one of the reasons why people I would never speak to, or would probably never speak to me, will suddenly come up and be like, oh my God, you're heels, you know, we'll have a conversation. But, you know, it's one of those things, like, I wonder if it's a thing where, like, do you know, Beyonce had an alter ego for years called Sasha Fierce.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Did you know that she actually retired that alter ego?
Yes, I remember there was a whole thing about there is no Sasha Fierce, I am Beyonce. Yeah, there was a whole thing about it. Yeah.
But it's like she needed that alter ego for years to transcend the years of being a choir girl and really step into that Beyonce energy that everybody loved. Because as talented and as amazing a singer as she is, it wouldn't have been the same without all that attitude, right? You know? But after embodying that for years, she didn't need it anymore. She had just become it. And apparently, Cary Grant, the famous, you know, American actor, the same thing. Like, it was an alter ego for years. And one day he woke up and he was just like, I realized that I had actually become this person that I had pretended to be for so long. And so I don't know. I get into, and I'll start shitting on myself, you know, like, I know I'm fucking incredible. Like, I'm fucking awesome. Like, I've worked my ass off to be able to say that, to own it, to become, you know, this awesome person. But there's another level of me that is blindingly bright. And I've been talking a lot recently about how do I get to her? And then the universe provided this awful experience for me to go through, and this checklist of, oh, you're not owning your power. You're a fucking coward. You know? But I was really shooting on myself a few weeks ago, and I was like, I can feel this person. I know how she thinks. I know how she views the world. I know how she views herself. Why can't I just step into her? Like, I can feel the energy. Like, I know who this woman is. Why can't I just wake up and just be her? And I was really, really frustrated. And I finally had to stop. And I'm like, okay, Heather, you making yourself wrong for not being able to do this is not helping anything. It's actually hurting. So stop it, you know? And then the answers came, and it's a bloody difficult fucking list I've been presented with. And I'm like, all right, challenge accepted. If this is what I got to do. But, you know, if it takes me stepping into my fun heels and I have fun in them anyway, then okay, if that's what it takes for me to be my shining bright self, you know, if that's part of it, I think, you know, it's enough that we find what those things are and we just embrace it.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, I absolutely.
Yeah. So I will say, if you're watching this and 9-inch heels or 90s shoulder pads are not your superpower, then figure out what it is. But I'm willing to bet that at least some people have those things hidden away and they saved them for special occasions.
Yes.
And I would say wear them every day. Because my first pair, I had these 7-inch boots and I loved them and I tiptoed in them and I didn't wear them outside. And then now, I mean, they're wrecked because I decided I'm actually going to wear them. Like, what am I saving them for? And this is, you know, it's crazy. So if you're saving stuff, whether that's lingerie or perfume or lipstick or a pair of jeans or a flannel shirt or whatever your thing is, just wear it. Just enjoy it. Just step into that. Yeah. Yeah. This has been fun. This has been so fun.
So much fun.
I'm so sad that we didn't record this. I assumed it was recording. Oh my gosh.
It's fine. It's fine. We have ways, Heather.
There are ways around this.
I will send you a copy. But anyway.
We have the technology.
We have the technology. We just did not.
We can make you better.
We are all about consent, and we did not do consent. So we'll now that we have consent, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We can make you sexier, more confident.
With your consent. That's it. That's it. So, Heather, thank you so much for joining us.
Honestly,
Tell us about, so people can find you at Heather Wild Coach.
Yeah, so at Heather Wild Coach, all one word smushed together on Facebook and IG. I do not hang out on IG a lot at this time, but I'm going to be starting a podcast, which you guys have to come play with me on. It's going to be called Wildlife. And
amazing.
So
is it like this? Is this right?
It is.
Wild Coach. Yes.
That's perfect. And you know, still doing my ethical sales coaching, transformation, and you know, but don't step up for this transformation stuff if you're not ready for it, because it is some deep, ugly shit. It is only for the people who are really, really, really ready to transcend. But I can guide you through it and you know, be easy. And I'm gonna start doing some, you know, research and find out, like, what are people really desiring around, you know, the sex positive sex education and you know, sex coaching. So all of the things.
Well, all the things. And Cabaret is eternally pro sex worker.
Yes.
Just is. So we are doing Cabaret Q&A every other Monday. So if you have questions, a lot of people in the community said, they go, what is Cabaret? What has confidence got to do with it? How does this work? So ask us your questions. What do you want to know about Cabaret? And I will refer you to Ryan. No, we're happy to share. Like I mean, if you haven't learned that we're open books now, I mean, yeah. So do share. Next week we will be doing coffee in the community. I'm still eternally trying to do water. It's a daily practice. It's not going great. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm trying every day.
Same. I keep replacing mine with coffee.
Yeah. So Ryan and I take coffee breaks, and then we go, oh wait, we shouldn't. Okay, I'll speak to you in 15 minutes. Yeah. So, but we are trying, and we are doing the perfectly imperfect thing. So let us know what your questions are, or let us know if you want to join us on Confidence Through Cabaret's Confidence in the Coffee in the Community even. Oh, we have too many things. Or Cabaret Q&A, or Confidence Through Cabaret podcast, which is what I was trying to say the first time. Do let us know, and we'll sort it out, because we love to chat, and we have adored having Heather. We've been so excited all week, and we've just been so excited. Like, yes,
Heather, thank you guys.
Thank you for joining us today. It's been really such a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm so happy that I had that chat with Paula, and she, you know, threw out your name, Heather. And, you know, I was like, oh, and then now I get to meet Ryan. So I'm very honored to be here.
And we met some great people on Clubhouse as well together.
Yes. And, you know, anytime I can contribute to you guys, you know, let me know, because I love what you're doing, because there is so much confidence to be gained through embracing our sexuality and embracing, you know, performance. So I believe 1,000% in what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Just before we wrap up, I've just realized right at the end, that my Heather Jean says type on it.
Yes.
I know. I just noticed. So that is because my alter ego, my business world, as a business training consultant, I talk a lot about personal awareness and adapting and connecting to others. And I did a podcast, and I was given the word type. And it was like, discuss for 1 hour, which I absolutely loved. And so that's why it says type. And it's kind of like, you know, being typecast or being pigeonholed or being told you are one of those. I'm not a fan. There's the summary of the that's the upshot of my conclusion during that type, because nobody is one type. We are many things.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to explore. So I've loved exploring with you, Heather. Thank you so much. Ryan, do you want to take us through our tagline?
Well, I would, of course. We are Confidence Through Cabaret, and this has been the fabulous Cabaret Q&A with the amazing Heather Wild. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. My name is Ryan, of course.
And our name is Heather.
Heather. We are the Heathers. We just need Christian Slater to like blow some shit up, and it'll be perfect.
Christian Slater in this.
Yeah, that makes you Christian Slater.
Yes. Oh, we could do a cabaret number of Heathers.
I am fully on board already. We just need to use the best quotes from that film, and they are many and varied. I need to get
me with a chainsaw gently, Veronica.
Right.
I'm way up for this. Like the whole narrative is running through my head already.
Right. But we are here to remind you, of course, that it is your body, your world, your stage.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.